So, regardless of if we're talking about panic being primary or secondary, a really good conceptualization of panic is important. And when it comes to conceptualizing panic, we're going to do a good case conceptualization just like we would with any presenting problem. Now, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist and I'm really a behaviorist at heart. I want to look at cycles and processes. What's the chain of events that keeps this problem going and perpetuating that? So with that, we're going to do a good what's called functional analysis. I want to look at the ABCs. A stands for antecedent, B is the problem, behavior, or symptom, C is the consequence. So I'm happy to dive into this a little bit more if you guys need it, but I really want to get into how does this relate to panic? So when we're looking at the antecedents, antecedents is the what comes before the problem, behavior, or symptom trigger. Think of this as the trigger. Now, when it comes to working with my patients to get a good conceptualization, we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to look at what caused the panic, both originally and then what maintains it, what triggers it now. So, when it comes to what causes it, to be fair, we may or may not know. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time trying to get to the root origin of this, if you will, because frankly, it doesn't matter. We can treat things if we can understand how they're working now and what's maintaining and perpetuating it, then we can break that cycle and move people forward. But I do want to know, was this triggered by trauma? Was this triggered by accumulation of stress, right? Like when people hit a really stressful period in their lives, stress accumulates, meaning it sort of piles up. And eventually we hit a point where we just get maxed out. This is stressed out. And people might have panic then. And then maybe that sort of makes them more likely or more prone to have panic attacks in the future. Did it come out of the blue? They're minding their own business and bam, get hit with a panic attack. What started it in the first place, if we can tell? And I want to know what triggers it now. What do you know? What are you avoiding? Right? What are the things that tend to set off your panic at this point? And they might know and they might not. And when it comes to looking at the triggers, and this is important because this starts to help us identify treatment targets. So I do want to get a good lay of the land here. So I want to look at external triggers. So these meaning things that happen outside of my client or my person, right? So what kinds of situations trigger their panic? This could be things, if we're looking at primary panic disorder, the situations are probably going to be ones that involve them feeling stuck or trapped, particularly that would then meet criteria for agoraphobia. So is it a situation where they feel like they can't leave, right? So being in a booth at a restaurant or even being at a restaurant, is it being stuck in the pickup lane at school when they're going to pick their kids up after school? Is it being in the barber chair, right, with a cape around their neck? What are the situations that trigger their anxiety? We might be looking at panic as secondary, and I'm still going to look at, well, what are the triggers? Is it bugs? Is it germs? Is it being the center of attention? Is it being assertive? Is it being told no? Is it worrying about finances? Like, what's the situation? Similarly, what are the events, right? Are there specific things that happen that tend to trigger panic for you? Um, I also want to look at, wrong way. I also want to look at internal factors. So we've got all these external things, but internal triggers are huge. And a lot of times people miss these in the beginning. They experience the panic as coming out of the blue, but it is typically precipitated by something, an inside factor. So a sensation, this is huge, right? If they start to feel their heart rate go up, let's say because you're walking or you get angry or you have caffeine, so something that increases your heart rate, boom, that could trigger a panic attack. If they start to feel sensations in their stomach, that could trigger. I've had people who developed panic disorder after having COVID and they had some labored breathing. Then anytime their breathing got shallow or got labored, boom, panic. So it's triggered by a sensation. Sometimes the real trigger is the interpretation. This is the thought that flies through their mind as soon as that sensation starts. It's, Oh no, I'm going to have a panic attack. Oh no, I'm having a heart attack. So the way they interpret these sensations can be a trigger. Other cognitions, those can be automatic thoughts of, oh, I don't have time for a panic attack. Okay, that's the hurry up and fall asleep phenomenon. If you've ever been laying in bed trying to fall asleep and you're like, hurry up and fall asleep because I have to get up early in the morning, you get further and further from sleep, right? Same thing here. Oh no, I don't want anxiety can sometimes bring it on. And then as I referenced anger, sometimes emotions can then trigger panic. And when we're looking at the experience of panic with our patients, we want to look at, is it cued or is it uncued? Now, cued just means triggered, right? So that you can use those words interchangeably. And I'll use them both with my patient, either depending on what language they already use or how our conversation goes. But a cued one is a predictable panic attack. I know this is going to happen every time I'm in this situation. Every time I feel stuck, every time I have to sit in the center of an aisle, every time I'm the passenger in the car instead of driving the car, I know I'm going to have a panic attack. Those are triggered, cued. Uncued means out of the blue. There's no point-able cause for the panic attack. Now, there's some debate of whether it's truly uncued or is it one of those internal factors that triggers it and they just haven't dialed in. It can happen in like a split second. So they may not be really dialed in yet, but hopefully with treatment as we're going, we're building their awareness and they might start to notice, oh, this sensation happens, then I interpret it this way and I can intervene there to change it. There's also some, if we look at sort of subconscious programming, so things that happen outside of our conscious awareness. So I think behind the scenes in our brain, sometimes the anxiety center in our brain learns about danger and safety, good and bad. And that will sometimes trigger panic attacks where if we dig in enough, we can kind of find this was the cue. It's just not easily point-able. I'm going to give you an example so this will make sense. I was at a conference several years ago, and I'm sitting in a workshop, and the presenter was talking about this, the brain-based pathways of anxiety, and she was talking about a case study. It was a woman who was as an adult who started to have panic attacks at family holidays. And she says, I love my family. We get along well. I don't understand. I've always loved the holidays. There's nothing that should be anxiety provoking here. And after some exploration, she realized, hey, when I was in the second grade, this really nasty experience of circle time in elementary school. So sitting in circle time and the teacher calling on her and then ridiculing and embarrassing her for not knowing the answer. And her brain learned to associate sitting in a circle with bad, dangerous. Fast forward to family holidays. They were sitting in a circle, passing out gifts. And that was the trigger. Now, for that woman's experience, it was an out of the blue panic attack. Dig in enough, there's probably something there. Now, that's a little bit of just, hey, something to think about as you're going. To be honest, you don't necessarily have to know, and we don't have to get into that level of detail of every single panic attack, figuring out every single trigger. Sometimes we want to just really equip our patients to know what to do when panic strikes so that they feel confident in their ability to deal with it.